Hi, everyone. Welcome to Weekly Coffee with Nick San Diego. Just want to quickly mention an agenda before I deep dive into what Nick San Diego is. So I'm Isabel Wen, have my co-host here, Jessa Spainhauer. We're both committee members for Nick San Diego. And so today we have Gilad Goren from BitGreen joining us. Interesting conversation. The agenda basically is we're going to talk a little bit about Nick San Diego. What is this group? A little bit about Gilad, and then we'll have opportunity for a round robin introductions with everyone. Just want to know a little bit about each person here and what brings you here today and interests you in this topic. And then I think we'll just have an open discussion around the question at hand. So Gilad is the, maybe I'll talk about Gilad first and then Nick San Diego. But Gilad is this Chief Operating Officer of BitGreen. And BitGreen empowers individuals, communities, and organizations to play an active role in growing the impact economy with compelling blockchain solutions designed to reshape a more inclusive and transparent world. And that's pretty cool. And so for background, Gilad and I met because of Good Market, Taylor Smythe, who's at Good Market, which is a community that we're, I think, both a part of. It's a global marketplace for social enterprises, which is, it can be an entity, it can be an individual, and essentially it's just this open source platform for people to kind of, explain why their organization is a social enterprise and which elements of their operations kind of are building towards that. And it's an open application. Everyone can see your responses. It's free to apply. People around the world can look for you and look for people by industry or even by location. And so it's kind of like Nick San Diego 2.0, a network of networks. So we are a network within that network. And so maybe I'll take it, or give it to Jessa to explain maybe what Nick San Diego is.
Yeah, and we had put together just kind of a little presentation deck. So I think that will be good to start with. And part of it was thank you, Isabel. I have it up. I'm just trying to find my screen. I have a million tabs open. Don't worry. Okay. I love seeing Leah's smiling face there, though. I'm just like, oh, she looks so happy. And I'm like, wait. Okay, so next San Diego. So we put together this deck to kind of quickly kick off our meetings as a reminder and to an introduction to those who are new. And so the company I have with a business partner is Stellar Co. And we talk about Polaris, your North Star, like what's your purpose? Why are you doing it? And when things come up, opportunities and decisions to be made, it's kind of like, okay, focus on the big picture. So that is what we're modeling this off of as a Polaris. And oh, look at these transitions. Next San Diego exists to connect people for the common good. So literally anybody who wants to do good, we are the place to connect. We share without wanting to get anything back in return, but it could be anybody, business, students, employers, whoever. And we are a web-based community platform that increases the accessibility and our reach and our ability to share resources. And we do things like these weekly coffee chats where we feature guest speakers. We have an online Slack community as well that's fairly active, and then post on social media to share the knowledge and resources that we have with anybody who is interested. And so kind of like I mentioned earlier is who is Next San Diego for? Everyone, which goes against everything when you think about like, who's your client? And it's like, if it's everyone, it's no one. Well, we're the opposite of that. So this is really, what we have here, all facets of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, businesses, governments, universities, nonprofits, individuals, investors. It's just more of a values-based system in connecting people. Why do we stand out from other networks? Well, we have a regenerative focused approach to community building, and we do that through diversity and inclusiveness. We're a network of individuals coming from a place of abundance, And we support regenerative practices, and we do that with peer mentorship, education, and resources. These are the core values, coming back to, again, to diversity, inclusive of all organizations and individuals where everyone has an equal voice, sharing trust and abundance and be open, mindfulness, the impacts of our actions have on the community, economy, and environment, humility, be of service to others, and education, which is embedded into our service. Our moonshot goal is to be the go-to for resources and connections for regenerative business, local communities, and meaningful impact. So this is our committee. It's open to anyone. We encourage everyone to join. And these are just some of the faces that are behind the scenes keeping these things going. And we appreciate everyone's participation. So that being said, the best way for us to grow is to share, tell people, but we don't have any money. We're not a nonprofit. It's self-funded. We've had a few people graciously contribute to the Zoom and some of the overhead software, but it's mostly man hours, mostly Isabel's and mine, mostly Isabel's though. So volunteers are really helpful. If you or someone who might be interested, you can become a partner. And like I said, donations just help us cover literally just the cost to exist. And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessa. So yeah, if you have any questions, let us know. But we figured, we've been doing this for a year now, and we never really actually explained what Nick San Diego was at the beginning of each call. It was more like people would find through word of mouth and then come to these coffee meets. So just thought it would be nice to give it a little bit more structure and reinforcement of like what the community is and why we're all convening here. And so with that, I guess maybe we can do some introductions around before we get into the question, which is, can economic prosperity be made more equitable and realigned with environmental and social justice? And I'll paste that into the chat so you don't have to remember that. But I'll kick it off. I'll go first. I'm Isabel. I think most of you know me. And I co-created Nick San Diego with Jessa around this time last year. I am a strategy consultant for early stage businesses or businesses that are coming up with new initiatives, specifically purpose-driven businesses that are trying to align their values with their work. I am still getting used to speaking in some of the new languages and lingo in this space. And so sometimes I'll catch myself experimenting with new ways of expressing thought that some people are like, I don't understand what you're saying, but I know those words individually. So appreciate your openness with that. But maybe I'll kick it to Mara. Do you want to introduce yourself?
So I'm Marin Muxlow. I know Eric, I met you at TechCon a long time ago, the podcast, like a while ago. I've actually been doing a podcast also called Smart Cities with Darren Anderson. I'm the executive director of TIE San Diego. And I consult for a couple of other different organizations, one of them being the Entrepreneur Academy, which is the 501c3 that TIE San Diego created to house our entrepreneurship class for high school students. We're going to be running a summer camp at University of San Diego in August. We had initially thought it was going to be pretty big, but I think we're going to just try to keep it pretty small, seeing as how this is the first summer camp we've done. I can put the Entrepreneur Academy website too. The TIE site is kind of under construction right now. We've had a few issues with it lately, like last month, this month. Yeah, I'm also doing a little bit of work with something called the Center for Respectful Leadership that I can pop into the chat also, which is an organization that I think people on this call might find cool. So I'll pop all that in also.
Thanks, Maren. Do you want to popcorn to someone else?
I'm going to send it to Malia. I think I've emailed with you and I've wanted to meet you for a while, so it's nice to see you on the internet.
Hi, Maren. Thank you. It's nice to meet you. And I also have my video off because I am sitting on the floor currently stretching myself. So I feel you.
Awesome.
So hi, everyone. My name is Malia Garcia. I own a company called Inside Out, and we are an education community. And what we're looking to do is change the way that students think about themselves and think about learning in this world. And we're hosting, it's a free program this summer. We're launching a beta test of our fundamental modules. So this is for high school students who are focused on providing feedback and want to participate and contribute to this program we're creating. But it's also about understanding who you are, fundamentally building a value system around that, identifying purpose, and then creating behaviors that match that and match that experience. So looking forward to learning more about all of you and being here. So I will turn it over to Eric.
Hey everyone, I'm Eric, and I'm a professor, and most of my doctoral work is on sustainable strategic management. And one of the partners in doing that is the Pacific Rim Business Council. And the Pacific Rim Business Council for over 30 years has helped over 440,000 small and micro businesses do business anywhere in the world with the information they need, the connections, and the partners. And we do that as much for free as we can. The partnerships that we're creating right now is we've helped a bunch of small companies form companies that look like big companies but don't act like it. One is called Innovative Sustainable Living, and our goal there is to build sustainable community development. So we're busy working on the blockchain enabled enterprise resource planning for all the factories and creating these eco-friendly modular homes, but also in doing the value chain for the communities themselves. So it's not just about affordable housing, it's about affordable and satisfying living. So that's what I'm interested in. So I'm hearing to see what our speaker has. So Jessa, tell me your secrets.
All right. How long do you got? So I am, I mentioned earlier, I have a consulting company, A Stellar Co., and I have a business, now 2 business partners, and that Isabel has recently joined us just as of last week. We're joining forces and we work, I would say my focus there is supporting small businesses in strategy with a focus on stakeholder capitalism and doing good. You know, it's not, the profit will come if all these other things are in place. And then with that, I also have a podcast. Everyone, it sounds like we're all like podcasters here, which I love. So we have Orion, where we connect knowledge and resources to live a more conscious form of capitalism and feature businesses doing good, and resources for business leaders, and really ways that you can focus on people, planet, profit through this podcast. And then I also work, my career history is with a environmental consulting firm that I still work for. They focus on habitat restoration. And then I also have a startup product that I'm launching, a consumer product called Shirt Sauna. It's a sauna for your shirts. So
I love it.
A little bit of everything.
I love Shirt Sauna. Good.
Yay!
And by the way, I will be starting up a Innovative Sustainable Living podcast coming up now that we're returning back to the university where our podcast and video studio tiny is. So
Great.
hopefully we'll hear some of you on that as we move forward.
Yes, thank you. Keep us posted for sure. And then I'll go to JT, since I know you've recently joined and you and Isabel connect. We were just going around and doing quick introductions. So
okay,
it's up to you.
okay, glad I could make it. We had a really short meeting with my Hollywood outreach. I do a lot of open source for Hollywood, and I used to have an office in San Diego until the apartment below mine caught on fire It is temporarily in storage for right now. And because I'm up in Pasadena and San Diego. And that's where the Pasadena-San Diego bridge comes from. I've known Eric for a while and Isabel for probably a couple of years now. And I've been an active part of both startup communities in Pasadena and San Diego. And I've been into social entrepreneurism, CSR, and all that for years. I used to be a corporate type. I used to have a suit on when I went to work. Glad I don't have to anymore. And I deal a lot with software and media production. And I am a senior video freelancer for live events. So I'm a hired gun when any of these events that you go to have the big, huge screens, a lot of graphics, a lot of videos and stuff. I'm the senior lead on all that video, making sure everything looks good on the big screen. That's my main job, and looking forward to more of these virtual companies and virtual organizations like San Diego popping up and continuing to support them. I think it's great.
Thanks, JT. Glad you can make it. And Gilad, save the best for last.
Oh, wow. It's kind of quite the claim. I will say, however, that I took the name of this event to heart and I ordered a coffee, even though it's New York and it's nearly 4 p.m. So I'm probably not going to go to sleep anytime soon.
Cheating. This is tea.
See, everyone. Very, very happy to have this conversation with members of the social entrepreneurship and impact space in San Diego. I have a place in my heart for San Diego. Some of the best burritos I've ever had in my entire life are in San Diego. And you guys, whenever I meet someone from San Diego who doesn't live in San Diego, I just have one question: why? Like, how did you leave? I never meet people who leave San Diego. Very rare, and there's good reason.
Well, my son left. He's in Tokyo, and the one thing he tells me that he misses is a burrito. So
yeah,
I'm saying
San Diego. Yeah. San Diego is one of those places where people come to visit and never leave. They literally pay somebody to pack up their house and bring it to San Diego. I've heard that story repeatedly.
Yeah,
love it.
You guys have it good there. So you know what? I'll start with just a little my story, and then I'll address Isabel's question before I get into like the pitch of what BitGreen's about. It'd be good to, well, now that I have more of a background, I think I'll focus on the work that you guys are doing. So my name is Gilad. It's a difficult name to write, as to say. I'm originally from Israel, and I grew up mostly in New York, however. And basically, I kind of fell into the world of social entrepreneurship about 12 years ago. I had been living in Israel, and I was asked to join the family business, which is in tourism, of all things. Very old school, still, I think sometimes they're in the 19th century in terms of technology. But that brought me back to New York in 2010. And around that time, I think the world of social entrepreneurship was really taking shape. Things like the Nexus Philanthropy Conference, Social Good Summit was happening. The UN, or at least UNICEF and some other organizations started taking up this mantle of, hey, could we have a double or triple bottom line? And I, by chance, fell in with a community of social entrepreneurs and had no idea what it meant. But through social, basically connections and going to events, my eyes opened up. And that led me on a path that started actually, again, in the world of travel, how to optimize what is arguably the world's biggest industry and make it better to the world. And that's where most of my time was spent. And then, but at the same time, just always delving into the study, a self-study of what are the macro trends, what are the macro ideas that are putting us to, I guess, the world where it is right now. And I came across writers such as Charles Eisenstein, Bernard Lettier, and others who started talking about money as a myth, or money as a story, or money as something that's a human construct. Some amazing books that really shaped my re-understanding of what money is, you know? When you, I think, talk to most people and ask them what money is, they'll say, okay, it's a unit of currency. It's what I need to pay the bills. It's what I slave about. They often don't say that money is an agreement or a social construct that we somehow decided the way it works right now works. But that really is what it is. And that sort of opened the door to thinking about alternative stories for what purpose money could serve. And then I used to live in LA. So having lived in Venice in the years of 2016, 2017, Again, by sheer osmosis, really. I lived in an area surrounded by blockchain entrepreneurs, crypto entrepreneurs. This wasn't the earliest days, right? This isn't Bitcoin in 2010 or anything of the sort, but this was in the years leading up to the last really big boom, which is 2017, the ICO boom. If anyone was aware of blockchain at the time, often most people you talk to, especially the ones who are really building incredible projects now, say that's when they found out. That's what opened up their understanding of what the potential here is. So likewise with me. And just think and you know, really doing some private research again. What is Bitcoin? What is Ethereum? What's all the hype around blockchain? Why is everyone saying blockchain going to eat the world? New internet, all these like, you know, phrases that get thrown about. And then how does it connect with impact? And that's sort of the path that led me towards BitGreen, which I joined officially in 2020. So as to the question, Isabel, the question you asked was, could we redesign the economic system to be more equitable? Is that a good regurgitation of your question?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. So in a word, yes. I think just as money is essentially a set of agreements, a tool for collaboration that could be, it's totally amoral, right? Money's not evil. Money's not also obviously pure at heart. There is no heart. It's a myth, it's a story, it's a tool. Likewise with the economic system we have right now. There is just a fundamental misalignment between economic prosperity and environmental sustainability and social cohesion or thriving. And the reason we are where we are is because of the set of incentives have been misaligned with what I think collectively in our heart of hearts we all know needs to happen. And I think blockchain has a very significant role to play in realigning those interests. And I do think that BitGreen, at least in our mission and what we're attempting to do, can play a role in pushing us to a new paradigm. Yeah, we all, I mean, if you've read Thomas Kuhn's Structure of Scientific Revolutions, another book that kind of opened my eyes, his theory is that the leaps that we as a society have in terms of technology, science, and just beliefs altogether happens in a set of spirals, right? Where you have the earliest proponents of a way of thought. So say the earth is round or the earth revolves around the earth. So people like Copernicus and Galileo, we've all heard of. And they may have been the first, but it's likely that they had others who had said what they said beforehand, who were probably taken out by the Inquisition or something of the sort. So you had the first innovators come in and then the push back and then that push forward that took us to the next paradigm, right? And it's essentially, that's how all revolutions happen. And I do think that in our case right now, we're at a time where you could sort of see a sort of initial push that had a massive lashback. And you could see this on all fronts. In our cultural exchanges currently, in the way the economic system seems to be kind of brittle, more brittle than ever, in the basically meta trends that are moving beyond where we are as a set of nation states that are constantly pushing at one another. And I think we're at a position where, you know, our generations will be the Sherpas to push us to the next paradigm on many fronts. And economics is going to be on the forefront of that. And I do believe that people like you who are at these little digital gatherings right now are the ones that will be eventually sitting in front of, you know, much larger gatherings. If you aren't already, I'm sure some of you have done this already. And then projects such as the one that we're hoping to push forward and that you guys are hoping to push forward as well will be the ones that will be on the forefront of pushing this forward. No big deal, no pressure. We just, that's where I think we lie at. Yeah. So if you want to, I could give a bit about what BitGreen is actually about now. If that's okay. Cool. So BitGreen originally started in 2017, and the original intention was to be the green Bitcoin. Assuming that some of you may not be as well versed in Bitcoin and crypto speak, I'm going to just start with the basics. So blockchain is a decentralized ledger. Essentially, it means that rather than having one central sort of authorized person who decides that a transaction or some piece of data happened or didn't happen, and then they kind of sign, give their seal of approval, you have myriad copies of a ledger that records different transactions that are all downloaded by many different computers at the same time. And then for the transaction that you send to the ledger to be recorded to occur, there's essentially a consensus mechanism where all those computers says, yes, that happened. And in doing so, you take out the middleman, right? So for example, my wife and I have been going through a very onerous green card process for her. We spent 1.5 years on the waiting list for an interview for some person to say, you look like you're married, cool, boom. That sucks. And there's many cases of that. When you think about legal fees, tax attorneys, everything. There's always a middleman, obviously the banking system. So decentralized ledger protocols show a way out of this sort of bottleneck and this sort of rentier issue, rent-seeking issue. The problem, why most people say, hey, yeah, blockchain sounds great, but it's horrible for the environment, is that some of the ways to create this consensus for very small minority of these blockchain protocols, they just happen to be the biggest ones, Ethereum and Bitcoin, they use this thing called proof of work. And in proof of work, that's basically all these different computers that are collecting that ledger and saying those transactions are legit. In order to incentivize them to do that and to do it in a way that's honest, to not lie, you build basically a reward mechanism. And that reward mechanism is money. And in the case of blockchain, that money is the token that sits on top of the blockchain. So for the Bitcoin protocol, it's Bitcoin. For Ethereum, it's Ether. For us, it's BitGreen, and there's others of the sort. And that's programmable money, by the way. We'll get that later. That's very, very potent concept as well. But basically, the way that the Bitcoin protocol is built, and this is where the word cryptography comes from, essentially, all these different computers have to solve a cryptographic equation, which is you get a massive number. We're talking about like dozens of digits of a number, and then the computer has to figure out which two numbers go into that multiplication. And the more computers are involved, the harder it gets. So you need more and more bigger and bigger computers to solve that. Because if you solve it, you get the Bitcoin. And we all know how pricey Bitcoin is these days. And so that race to solve leads to a lot of electricity consumption, which leads to the problem that Bitcoin currently has. However, other protocols such as BitGreen don't have it. Instead of having computers race to solve an equation, we just use game theory. And the game theory version that we use is basically, it's in the interest of all those computers to be honest and say that transaction happened, because in order to be one of those validating computers, you have to own a certain amount of the tokens, and you stake it, like I'm putting my money in, right? Now, if you stake it, that means you spend money to get those tokens, right? So you don't want the system to fall, because if it falls, all those tokens are worthless. And that's game theory. So it's in the interest of every computer that is staking to say, hey, that happened, for the chain to keep going. And that's why we have honest brokers on proof of stake. And so BitGreen took the original code of Bitcoin, forked it, which means we essentially cloned it, which happens a lot of in open source technology, which is really exciting because it leads to a lot of innovation real quick, and then added code which makes it proof of stake. So we were one of the first players to do that back in 2017. So we essentially, if Bitcoin was to be digital gold, we were going to be the green digital gold. We then incorporated as a nonprofit out of the state of Wyoming. Wyoming is taking an incredible swing at being the epicenter of blockchain and cryptocurrencies in America, and arguably in the world. They set a lot of very crypto-friendly legislation. They're very forward-thinking. So that's why we incorporated there. I joined officially in 2020 as COO. And the reason I decided to join the team is because in my mind, I knew that just being green gold, it's nice, but it's not really going to change the world. That's woefully short on the potential that blockchain has. And some ideas I'm sure you have in your mind already, much bigger than just, okay, store of value that's green. I joined with the mission of basically making BitGreen the underlying protocol, the tech stack, if you will, for all the impact that could be created on blockchain. The first original permutation of that was going to be for BitGreen, the coin, BitG. So dollar USD, BitGreen, BitG, to be an impact currency. And for us, that means building an ecosystem where individuals are able to earn BitG from the foundation for everyday impactful actions, such as composting, recycling, volunteering, et cetera, et cetera. And likewise, we'll onboard a growing community of mission-aligned vendors, charities, and other organizations who would accept the coin as payment. And then also through different hooks would actually send money back and then build a thriving impact economy rather. So basically create GDP off a lot of the actions that are the most crucial for communities to thrive and for the environment to be sustained, but aren't counted in traditional GDP. Right? We have this absurd position where I could sell cigarettes to underage children, and that counts as GDP, but volunteering, since there's no money exchange, doesn't count. That's part of that story we need to change. And so we started building the tech for it. We built the portal for it. We started onboarding partners and realized quite quickly that some of those partners have great ideas to move beyond just that impact currency. They thought about, hey, could I raise money from the world of mission-aligned individuals without having to go through the throes of VCs and all this kind of stuff? Can we do a lot of peer-to-peer loans? Can we set up all these arrangements that allow for a truly thriving impact-based economy and do it on blockchain? So I don't have to go through banks. I don't have to go and pay the rents to all these middlemen and just get it done on a community basis. And the answer is yes, but not on our chain as it was. And so in February of this year, we as a community voted, because we are a decentralized community-based project, to move from the Bitcoin chain that we built, which is super safe and great, but very limited in terms of capacity, to a new ecosystem. It's called Polkadot. And to keep it very easy, Polkadot is basically an ecosystem of different blockchains, which means rather than you have one blockchain and all the different projects are built on it, Polkadot allows for every single project to have its own chain, and they're all connected, making it much quicker and much more effective to build stuff on it. And we don't have to get into the details unless you want to about that. But basically, what ended up happening is, as we moved to this new chain and we started talking to new partners, we realized that actually the true potential for blockchain, one of the true potentials, but the one that could be really effective by doing this, is the world of finance. So some stats that I'm sure many of you already heard of many times. The world is facing a $50 trillion funding gap for us to reach the SDGs by 2030. That's 2.5 trillion per year. Small and medium businesses alone account for about $1 trillion in funding gaps. And these are businesses from all over the world. Small and medium businesses are the linchpins of society. They're the backbone of the economy, all those good things. These are businesses that are too big for microfinance, that don't fit the hockey stick projections of venture capitalists, and that banks don't really look at. And so they're left by themselves. The Nature Conservancy has a number of 700 billion of a funding gap for us to reverse the ails of biodiversity on the globe. Where's all this money coming from? Increasingly, the UN has stated that the money needs to come from the private sector. There's $50 trillion in assets being managed by institutions right now, okay? The average, I'm just gonna throw a bunch of numbers, so it's just to set the context. Currently, when it comes to the world of impact investing, it's a fairly growing sector. It's grown to $715 billion this year, which is great. It's grown exponentially, but yet woefully short on its potential for impact. part of the reason is because there is lack of communication, fragmentation, and deal flow. People don't know where to look for qualified deals. It's hard to get an exit. Most of the impact investors are white men that sit in San Francisco or Europe. They don't want to fly all the way down to Soweto or to, the developing world to do the due diligence, or it's just not worth it for them. Lots of excuses. So there's a lot of money that's looking to do impact because there's pressure from consumers and from investors. And there's a lot of companies could do really great impact if they just had the money, and there is a bottleneck. And so we decided at BitGreen, having the experience in finance, social impact, in decentralized finance, which I could get into if you guys want. That's basically taking the entire world of banking and finance and putting it on blockchain, which is a huge growing sector. And technology, we maybe naively decided, hey, we could build this system, build it on blockchain to maximize security, to maximize transparency. And oh wait, by being on blockchain, the deals could be instantly liquid because it's very easy to buy and sell contracts, and democratized so that you don't need to sign a $3 million check on the deal, or 5 million, which is the current average check size. How many people could sign a $5 million check? But maybe $50, so that any retail investor could get into this. And then now for the first time, people could truly invest in a way that's mission aligned to earn higher returns than what you get if you put your money in your bank, which is what, 0.02%, and then minus inflation, it's negative. And get returns that are demonstrable on projects that you want to see in the world. And so that is what we're trying to build at BitGreen. So we're building, in other words, to keep it succinct, we're building a decentralized, on blockchain, liquid impact investing platform. Okay, I'll stop there. I threw a lot at you. Yeah, happy to answer any questions or just continue the conversation. I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
I have a question, and I'm not embarrassed. I have a hard time. I haven't grasped the idea of cryptocurrency. I don't get it. I can repeat all these words, but I just don't understand. And something that I think my fundamental thing that I have a hard time understanding is, how is there value assigned to it? If I could say I create this currency, and I know this gets into well, what is value? Value, what does that mean to you and to the other person? But if I have a can of I don't know, toothpicks, and I'm here's a currency. And that's what so how is the currency and value created? And maybe that's the whole point. I'm just it's not clicking for me, but it's who's it to say that you can do things with these coins?
Totally. That's a very valid question. And it takes time to break through the current paradigm of understanding of what money is. And frankly, part of the reason is because we never learned about this as kids. We never had financial education or fiduciary education. It's not stuff you learn, which is insane now that you think about it, because this runs everything. But the first money ever was cowrie shells and rugs and cattle. And then what assigned that to be money for the longest time was just what the market deigned to be money. And eventually it became the state decides. And you have Caesar's face on it. And then that has grown over to where we're at right now. So currently, right, $1 is worth $1. That greenback is worth something because you have the strongest economy in the world saying, hey, it's good. I will give you your value in it. It used to be that it's backed by gold. It's no longer backed by gold. It used to be fractional, so maybe you'll get back a portion of it. Now there's nothing. Now it's just the promise of the US economy. But fundamentally, money, again, is an agreement. It's the market designs book value. Why is a Picasso original worth so much and a copy worth very little? Because the market has decided it. So if you think of it, if you forget the fact that it was invented out of thin air, think of it as a commodity, okay? There's buyers and there's sellers. The more buyers, the more value. Bitcoin has gone up to 60,000 and then it went down to 34,000. Why? Because at one point, so many people wanted it that they gave value to it. And when it crashes, because less people want it. The only difference is, number one, it's digital, so you're not holding it. And number two, you don't have a country backing it, right? And because you don't have a country backing it, it sounds a little harsh. But in reality, like there are currencies that are, as I said, Bitcoin is literally a program. And because there's been so much adoption, that's why it's worth. And by the way, for setting some context, at this point, pretty much every major bank in the world has a strategy for crypto. Mostly it's Bitcoin, but literally every important hedge fund holds this coin. You probably own the coin even if you don't think so, because your mutual fund or one of your funds has it. It's reached that point. On top of that, there is the cool thing about crypto is that it's programmable money. So this is where impact kind of takes shape. You could set a framework for how a money works now. So for example, Next San Diego could create a coin with parameters that say the money could only be spent with vendors or charities recognized, right, that have proof to show that they're based in San Diego, or that fit a certain criteria that Next San Diego sets. You could create a currency that's backed by the dollar or pegged to the dollar. You get a currency that is pegged by anything else. It's the opportunities here are much bigger because you could basically program this money to be aligned with your mission. But yeah, the question of value is always really tough because really what is value, as you said? In reality, it's what the market wants. And this is truly libertarian currency. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Thanks for explaining that, because I know I'm like asking you to explain something very complicated in a very short amount of time. But that is really helpful. And I'm getting that I'm on the path. And thank you, Isabel, for sharing that resource. And I was going to say too, like in that kind of context too, it's like I need to think, well, who says this dollar is worth $1? Because it's literally a piece of paper. But we are just so ingrained and used to it. Like you're saying earlier, it's like, I don't even question it. So I think it's just like, like you guys were talking about, it's like, I need to unlearn. And
just so you know that in addition to cryptocurrency, you can have crypto tokens, and that just means it's anchored to something. Like I have tokens that are connected to a portfolio of companies and gold mines and things like that, but it's actually traded on Ethereum as crypto tokens. So they don't exist by themselves, they exist being anchored to something.
Yeah, thanks for that explanation, Gilad. That was, I know a lot of people like, this is a lot of information, new words and unfamiliarity, and it's coming up in the news a lot. So people are just kind of interested to learn more. Another thing I might point out is you mentioned, two of the key differences that you said between traditional government-backed currency and cryptocurrency. There's another element in addition to that, which is the possibility for like you said, mentioned, the true libertarian decentralized aspect. And that's something that Marilyn also pointed out, cryptocurrency is not regulated. I was just reading an article, I forget which journal, but they were talking about, some people using cryptocurrency not intentionally in a bad way, but that's one of the outcomes because they weren't thinking about true accessibility and actually making it decentralized. For example, some cryptocurrencies are still controlled by the people who created it, and it's not an open, it's open ledger, you can see it, but you can't control it. And so, but BitGreen is different because you actually have your community voting on what BitGreen is and the protocols and what can and cannot be included in the expenditure and earning. But then there's also another element of a lot of people are using cryptocurrency in developing countries where, for example, the government-backed currency, some catastrophic event happens, like a natural disaster or something, or war, and their actual currency is no longer valuable or meaningful. And so they have to rely on blockchain or cryptocurrency to transact. And some groups, the article was saying that some groups come in and they set up a cryptocurrency, but a lot of the people can't actually access it. They don't have the technology or the devices, and there's what they call the digital divide in some places. And so just some nuances there.
Yeah, there's a few things that are worth noting. And I'm reading the notes, and look, it's definitely still the Wild West for some of this stuff. And I mean, if my mom came to me and say, I want to invest, what do I do? Number one, read and do the research. You got to do the research. And most of the projects out there are not worthwhile. Either it's too early, or yeah, there are bad actors, but there's bad actors everywhere. And frankly, like, the traditional financial system has its pluses, it definitely has its minuses. I mean, the traditional financial system is pretty much one of the main reasons we are where we are, okay? With a misalignment between incentives, between economic prosperity for everyone, and also social and environmental justice. So, you know, and one thing I just wanted to really clarify, because there's often a confusion between blockchain and cryptocurrencies. The blockchain is a technology that creates this decentralized ledger, okay? You don't need to have cryptocurrency, you don't need to have crypto to use this technology. Cryptocurrency is essentially one of the applications on top of blockchain, and that is basically allowing for this new internet of money, if you will. So just to give an example, so the way our marketplace is gonna work, okay? Traditional double-sided marketplace. We have supply of capital and demand of capital. In our case, the demand of capital are companies that need a loan for expansion. So they have a proven, model. They have money coming in, all that stuff. Number two is project finance. So this is, for example, a company that wants to build a bridge, a company that wants to do carbon sequestration through satellite imagery and through AI. This is one of our pilot partners. They just need to give money to the farmers to create regenerative agricultural practices, and that's where they do the carbon sequestration. They know that if you give them $50,000, they'll be able to make $150,000 out of it, and pay back plus interest, that kind of stuff. So supply are impact investors, or frankly, anyone who wants to earn 8%, okay? The information on the opportunity, say with that company that does the carbon sequestration, will flow into our system. Think of it like know your customer stuff, transactions, team, all the information you should know about a company before you invest will go, and they'll be recorded on blockchain. Again, blockchain is an immutable, incorruptible, and decentralized ledger of all that information. So the advantage here, number one, it's incorruptible. So you know that the information coming in is not fake. Number two, it's quick. That information gets recorded in no time and comes to you real super quick. And everyone has access to it at the same time, so it's much more fair. That information goes in, you as the investor gets to see the information. We then also build this thing called a smart contract. What's a smart contract? It's a contract on blockchain. Why is this really interesting? Because a smart contract is basically software. It's a program. Once you set the parameters and the rules, it works. It then doesn't care if you're a black, white, man, female, where you're from, and all that kind of stuff, right? The law is code, code is law. This smart contract, as soon as it gets a trigger, say money going in from the investor, it distributes money to the company. When money goes back from the company, it distributes to the investor. Nothing changes. You don't need a lawyer. You don't need any of that kind of stuff. It just happens. So we build that. Investor decides to go in. They basically send money through blockchain, right? That's the tokens we were talking about. So say a stable coin, which is this is a token that's connected to the dollar. Let's say 1 million of it gets sent to the smart contract. It then gets distributed to the company. Company has its money, then does what it needs to do with it. Once it gets its money, upon wanting to redeem that loan, sends it back to the smart contract. All this goes through blockchain. I didn't mention once our own cryptocurrency on top of it, right? Even you could drop off the stable coin and you basically need a record of showing that money was sent. And that's the beauty of blockchain. So now you're cutting out rent seekers, you're cutting out middlemen. It's all in the open, it's all transparent. So now imagine companies who do everything on blockchain to show transparency, right? Just the opportunities here are just incredible for just creating a more equitable world. I'll stop there, but basically, yeah, I just wanted to give a little clarity as to the difference between blockchain and cryptocurrencies.
Thanks. I think that is an important thing to distinguish. But I think I want to call on Marilyn because I know she's got a lot she wants to say.
Hi, nice to see everybody. I'm sorry I arrived late. Yeah, I used to work for the State Department and was in the Office of Counter-Terrorist Financing and Sanctions. I have nothing nice to say about crypto. It's being badly, badly abused by the bad guys who want to destroy us. And I don't think that's really fully understood. I love the enthusiasm and I get it, but it's not regulated. And it's so far, when it is regulated, oh my goodness, I don't know how to regulate it at this point. And I'm no longer working there. Anyway, Acor, which is my company, discovered green chemicals in the ocean back in 2002. So we've been into sustainability for a very long time, and we've seen not very much happen for sustainability. You know, the chemicals being used widely, the average American is exposed to 30 pounds of very toxic chemicals a year. We are poisoning ourselves. Babies are being born with toxic chemicals in their systems. And the chemical industry is $1 trillion industry. It's one of those things that you really can't mess with. They control petrochemicals. What do you know? They're poison. So it's all part of this really big brick wall that regulators have been extremely slow around the world to ban this stuff. And having observed this for 20 years, I will tell you that until there are sanctions and a monetary ban, like cigarettes were banned, these toxic chemicals are going to continue to kill us. And the sad thing is nobody knows the impact of these hundreds of toxic chemicals in our lifetime. You know, if the animal studies, they're conducted for 6 months, it's not going to tell you what we have been consuming for all these years. So it's a very serious problem. Green chemistry is now a $100 billion industry. So it's crawling forward, but as I say, compared to the it's $5 or $6 trillion petrochemical industry, it's really a drop in the bucket. It's very hard to find investors who've even heard of green chemistry. And in my experience also, the multinationals that now are, quote, going green is really such a little drop in the bucket. It's embarrassing. The fact that they may have a vice president with a title of sustainability VP doesn't tell me anything. Or that out of products of 100% of the content ingredient in a product, they add 2% something bio-based. You know, and then they're saying green product. It's a very big problem. I don't see regulators in the past over 4 years, our regulatory agency was decimated. Now they're coming back. I'm just watching it happen way too slowly. But Acor's green chemicals are being used. They are for sale as ingredients, and they are, we've also developed some products. The trick with green chemicals is they need to be regulatory approved. That costs about $2 million per chemical, which is a huge barrier. Nonetheless, we have 25 chemicals that are EPA approved, and we're selling them as water treatments, surface cleaners, and industrial product enhancers. We've been in work with NASA, which was our first customer, and pretty exciting work there. We're hoping that an experiment of ours will be shot up to the International Space Station this August. We haven't gotten the date yet, but it's promised and we believe it. So that's what Acor does. Green chemistry. These are green chemicals discovered in the ocean. The potential market for them, all told, is about $600 billion. So we're looking for investors who have the vision to see this. and will help front the regulatory approvals so that we can go into additional markets in addition to the ones we're targeting. So that's ACOR. I'm sorry to be a little bit critical of the sustainability and ERG and impact investing. And, you know, the Dow Sustainability Index has been around for at least 10 or 15 years that we've been following it. This was an index that Dow Jones created for companies that they deemed were sustainable. And some of the big paint manufacturers and chemical giants actually pegged bonuses for their executive team to the annual inclusion on that sustainability index. Well, it's sort of a joke, in my opinion, when these chemical giants producing the worst toxic chemicals that we're exposed to every year are on that list. So I don't know who's doing these lists of sustainability. I don't know how it's managed. But the purists of us in green chemistry and green products and bio-based products, or green in general, are, you know, following it very closely. And, you know, we look forward to finding collaborators and investors above all. As
Hey,
Bill knows.
Marilyn, I'm looking at the website. This is really interesting stuff. I never heard of green chemicals. I see you're raising an A round. It's equity, or are you raising debt?
We don't care. We raised 1.25 cash so far, but that's over 10 years, so it's not really a lot of money. We have very high patent costs and regulatory costs, so it's, you know, a struggle.
Maybe
our Series A, we said 5 million, but we're thinking 10 million is more realistic. We don't know if Bitcoin and tokens is the way to go. We were told it is, but it's, as I say, I'm very torn because of my professional background as a, you know, as a money cop. Follow the money. It's what the only way we have to get the bad guys is to follow the money. And when there's no trail to follow, I just can't get that out of my head.
So just a couple of things. After this conversation, I would love to get information on investment, because there may be a fit with what we're doing. As to the second point on you being the money cop, I'm gonna have to disagree, politely disagree on a few things. Number one, actual stats show that 0.2% of all transactions on all crypto actually goes to nefarious means. So there's a lot of verbiage out there, especially in the press, especially for politicians who don't read their briefs properly, who say all crypto goes to terrorism. It's absolutely fundamentally not true. In fact, the biggest source of funding for terrorism is greenbacks, because they're harder to, you know, trail because it's cash. So that's one thing to note. Number two, the other thing is that
I don't only mean terrorism. I mean tax evasion. Hello, the international pastime of the rich.
Well,
and
yeah,
not the rich.
Yeah. IRS has also been underfunded, and one of the best things Biden has done is put money into the IRS. I'm with you. The other thing that's worth noting is that it's actually not really true that crypto is anonymous. Actually, very few of the cryptos are actually anonymous. It's pseudonymous, yes, but the FBI and other agencies have been very successful in tracing, trailing, and capturing funds. In fact, Hamas just had millions taken away from it it was possessed with FBI support in Israel. And Katie Hahn, who's now co-leading one of the biggest funds in the world for crypto, Andreessen Horowitz, her background is being a money cop, and she actually shut down one of the biggest like digital dark, it was called Silk Road, by basically tracing and trailing Bitcoin. So it is actually possible to do all this, and there's companies that have government contracts and they're stopping it 100%. There's a few that are definitely much harder to trace, but very few organizations actually use them. So I feel you on this front, and we're the first ones to say that all of it has to be regulated, but regulated fairly, because internet, right? The internet, same thing that people are saying about crypto now, people were saying about the internet.
Yeah, I get it.
70% of the internet is pornography. Are we going to shut down the internet now?
Well,
You know?
I don't want to argue with you because everything you're saying is right, but it's taxpayer money policing this stuff. And what a drain. It's just, it should be transparent and then no problem.
I agree, like with the transparency, and admittedly, I know nothing about this, but I have an opinion, is I feel like anything that comes out can be used for bad, like
Right.
in general. And people who want to do bad things are going to find a way to do it. And kind of along the same lines, like I think about I don't know if anyone's watched Startup on Netflix, but it's basically about, I don't want to spoil it, but it's about cryptocurrency and nefarious activities and terrorism on this, and you can't trace it. And it's like open source, all this stuff. So anyway, if you're into that, it's an entertaining show. And so I think that, when you talk about like tax evasion, like that's already happening. Like tax evasion, I mean, it's just come out that the billionaires aren't paying taxes. That, what was it, Donald Trump, his salary was like $75,000 in a year. Like those things are already happening. And so I don't know if that's like strong enough case. And same thing with terrorism, like this is already happening. And so is it going to get worse? Like,
Yes.
Are there enough resources
to? That's the point. When our institutions are being used to kill us, that's when you have to draw the line. So when the integrity of our financial systems are being undermined for any reason, by tax evasion, by money laundering, and by terrorist finance, they're all related. And yes, it's a national pastime to avoid taxes. It's a national pastime to launder money if you can. Very legitimate businesses do it all the time. And so where do you draw the line? And the line is drawn when the terrorists or the drug dealers and other criminal elements get involved. And they are involved because there's no safety net for us. There's no, as I said, you have to follow the money to get the bad guys. So I'm not arguing this. Badness, they're going to use loopholes, they're going to use hawala, they're going to use a lot of other mechanisms you've probably never heard of. They're being widely used. And the point is, it's all built into the system. The trillions of dollars this sucks away from our economies is fine, if you can say it's fine. But it's when it's killing us and making us, the taxpayers, pay more taxes to cover the shortfall. And that's when I say enough is enough. And he who has money buys his way out of almost everything. So at least who within the crypto world is the policeman? I worked as a broker for many years, stockbroker. At least they have a compliance department that supposedly knows all or has records that can be subpoenaed. And if that were the case with crypto, I wouldn't feel so badly. But here it seems like it's beyond me how it's managed. It's really not my topic anymore. So I, like you, Jen, I'm just expressing an opinion that it's a danger for all of us because we are now going to be slapped with taxes to rebuild our economies and give a decent minimum wage to people while trillions of dollars are being spent around the world on facilitating the rich. It just doesn't make sense to me.
So I might make one last comment before I stop the recording. I want to be respectful. I know we're going over time. One thing that I really like about BitGreen is that it's not just purchasing blockchain or cryptocurrency, like converting US dollars for BitGreen, but you generate it by doing good actions. And it's an infinite cryptocurrency, so there's no limit, which is kind of two of the problems that we see in traditional government-backed currencies. One, it's limited because they say so. And two, only certain actions can provide it. And so you have this scramble ultimately of an insufficiency amount of money that's circulating, but there's more actions that need money to transact. Like money is literally just a form to transact, to say like, you know, I did a thing of value, or I gave you something of value. And so cryptocurrency, especially unlimited versions like Ethereum and BitGreen, are a way for people to transact without a limit and without, you know, saying it's reliant on a US dollar or something like that. So I think there's space for, you know, the concerns that you brought up, Marilyn, of like, you know, we're not trying to funnel US dollars from one version into another version, but just what is a different way of how the economy could work, and to enable people to, you know, provide services if they wanted to, even though, you know, a lot of communities don't have enough money, for a lot of different reasons. And I put a link to a documentary in the chat, and I'll put it in the YouTube as well. It's called The Money Fix. It's really fascinating, and they talk about, you know, the history of money, like what is money, and kind of it helped me get past that of like, well, yeah, like who says what the value is, and like why is it set up this way, and what are some of the fallacies and things that people are doing. And this is from 10 years ago even, you know, what are some things that people are doing that are a little bit different, like Eric's Eco Village, you know, there's places where people literally, it's just a piece of paper and it says this is a Hudson dollar and you can only transact in the Hudson Valley. Because we don't have enough US dollars to transact in this community, but we, you know, I'm still doing stuff. I'm still growing vegetables or whatever, or I can babysit, and just using that to transact. So kind of want to leave it on a slightly more optimistic note. And then before I close out, I'll mention, you know, just want to ask people if this was a value to you, please join the community, Next San Diego, www.nextsandiego.org. At the bottom, there is a subscription form, and it will automatically send you the link to join our Slack workspace. We have these coffees every Thursday at this time, 12 to 1 Pacific. And for those of you in San Diego, we have our first in-person event tomorrow, Friday, July 9th, from 5:30 to 7 in La Jolla UTC in the Nobel Athletic Fields. And with that, I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you so much, Gilad, and everyone for coming here today. I'm going to leave the room open if you do want to stay and can keep talking and connecting. I encourage that. But otherwise, thank you all for coming, and see you next time.
Yeah, thanks, Gilead and everybody. I gotta bail too. See you around.